Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. First of all, let me wish you a wonderful Independence Day week. If you've listened to this show for a couple of years, you know I prefer to say Independence Day, not the 4th of July, because the 4th of July is just a date, whereas Independence Day is the day when many brave men founded this nation, and most were killed and lost everything, including my ancestor who signed the Declaration of Independence, whose house was burned and his family slaughtered before his eyes. Also, we could have freedom. Yeah, I got a lot of ancestors who fought in the American Revolution and the War of 1812, and so for me it is Independence Day. So let's get into this week's show. It is, well, we're going to get into a really great herb. It's an herb every herbalist needs to know. It's a very popular herb. I'm sure it's one you've heard of before, but it's got some interesting qualities you may not be aware of, and it's skullcap. I just coincidentally harvested some skullcap maybe 3 days ago, dried it out. It's so hot. My word, it's hot this year. And it dried out quickly, so I've already got it as a tincture. We'll get into all the properties of skullcap later. But, it's also baseball season, and being a diehard Atlanta Braves fan, I'm having a wonderful time because the Atlanta Braves are having probably the best year they've had in 20 years. They are, you could even argue that they're doing better than they have since that fantastic season in the 90s. Wow, are they on a roll? The team's looking good. I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it. And there's only one thing better than a ballpark hot dog with mustard and sauerkraut, onions, and hot sauce, which is the proper way to dress a hot dog. Okay, you don't put ketchup on a hot dog. If you don't tell me about it. Now, if you want to have some chili and coleslaw, I'm good with that. But sauerkraut and hot sauce, for me, that's the way to go. Anyway, the only thing better is ballpark nachos. I love some nachos, so I'm going to give you sort of my look. I mean, it's 90 some degrees out there. I believe the high is 94 today where I am. It was actually only about 92 in Atlanta, but somehow North Carolina, I'm in the eastern part of the state, central and eastern North Carolina, always gets hotter than most anywhere else on the East Coast. And I'm not going to a ballpark. I'm not sitting in that sun. I'm not driving in Atlanta traffic, which is about the worst on earth, almost as bad as D.C. Definitely not paying to park, paying to go into the game, paying, outrageous amounts for a hot dog and a beer. I'm sitting at home. I'm watching the game and loving it. But let's get into my recipe for nachos. So if you ever thought, maybe you've read my cookbook or you've listened to the show and you think, oh, his recipes, they're a little, esoteric or a little complex. I'm going to give you just some honest, good, legit, made from real stuff nachos. Nachos are, they're actually an American invention. It was I believe it was a Mexican cook seems like it was Texas, some ladies who were having a few drinks asked him to make a snack, and his name was Ignacio, and everybody called him Nacho. And he fried up some corn tortillas and threw together a dish. So, and this nachos are actually as American as apple pie. So let's look at this real quick. All right, so I do a nice layered nachos. Okay, start with the chips. I don't care if you get a bag of chips. It doesn't bother me. If you want to, grab some masa and some lard, mix together with some water and salt, press out a corn tortilla, cut the tortilla into wedges like a pizza, and then fry them up into crispy nacho chips. Salt them as soon as they come off. And, if you do that, they're going to be fantastic. They're going to be way better than anything you buy in a bag. If you have a local restaurant that does fresh nachos, get them from them. But it really isn't that hard. Honestly, if you have a tortilla press, it's a whole lot easier. But you can absolutely press or roll that dough out flat with a plate or two, against the countertop, or with a rolling pin. Put down a couple of layers of like parchment paper and put it in between, and you'll get a nice thin tortilla that won't stick. But it's really not that hard, and I do like to make my own tortillas. But I am totally not above buying a bag of tortilla chips. So that's your foundation, right? So now let's get some beef going. I like to use ground beef. Get your pan hot, put a little fat in there, sweat down some onions, toss in your beef. Maybe cook some chopped peppers with the onions. Chop up some jalapenos, serranos, whatever. Cook those with the onions before you put in the beef. But it really doesn't matter if you order that much. I just always start my onions first. Add to that some garlic. Always, you don't want to burn your garlic, so always wait until the onions are translucent before your garlic goes in. Crushed and chopped, good to go. And a little cumin. And I like to do usually a little crushed red pepper. That's it. Real simple. Brown it up, stir it up. It's good to go. Now, for the refried beans, I'm kind of a legume fanatic, as you know. I like to use a good bean. Pintos are very traditional. You can use kidney beans if you like. Black beans are, of course, very good. Anasazi beans are fantastic. I really like Eye of the Goat beans. If you can find Eye of the Goat beans, get them. They are the most fantastic heirloom bean. They actually taste like beef. They're wonderful. So, if they're dry beans, you would have wanted to soak them overnight. If they're canned beans, whatever. So, bring your beans up to a boil, put in plenty of lard, put in some salt and pepper, put in a little cumin, and then we can get into a couple of interesting herbs. Obviously, cumin is a good medicinal herb, and so is cilantro, which we'll talk about in a minute. Onions and garlic are obviously very medicinal, but you can put into this, one of my favorite ingredients is avocado leaf. Avocado leaf is actually in the bay laurel family. It's the leaf of the avocado plant. It gives an interesting flavor. It really gives a depth of flavor, almost a sort of an anise type flavor or bay leaf flavor. And it's also very good for you, very immune supportive, very anti-inflammatory, so some very good properties. Another one is epazote. Now, epazote is something, unless you grow it yourself, you're probably going to have to go to a Mexican neighbor or a Mexican grocery store tienda to get it, because it's not good dried. Epazote is the herb that is believed to prevent flatulence from beans. It is also a very good immune supportive, anti-inflammatory herb. It has some really interesting properties. It's kind of weedy. It's actually easy to grow. I would encourage you to grow some and use it for its good flavor. It's got a sort of a slightly bitter flavor, and it's sort of like parsley, actually, in flavor. And then it also has the carminative, it helps digestion like parsley does, and it really enhances the flavor. So cook those beans down, and when they're good and soft, let the water mostly evaporate, and then just start mashing them up. Just mash them up, and you're good to go. That's all refried beans are. They're just cooked down, seasoned with plenty of lard, mashed up beans. Salt and pepper to taste, they're good to go. Taste every one of these ingredients, make sure it's seasoned the way you like it as you go. Then I like to do some, my own version of guacamole, which I've mentioned before. It's super simple. Just take some avocados, 3 or 4 of them. Take the pits out, scoop them out with a spoon, mash them up. Put some lemon or lime juice on that right away to keep it from browning. I add 1 finely diced tomato. Usually about a half an onion, very, very finely diced. I mean, like almost translucent. Crushed garlic, maybe 2-3 cloves. 2-3 hot peppers, like a jalapeno, serrano. Salt and pepper to taste. Some cilantro. Cilantro is an excellent carminative herb, excellent digestive herb. It's good for so many things. It's anti-inflammatory. It can help prevent colds. It can help actually detox the system from heavy metals poisoning. Cilantro is a very good herb to use. Some lemon or lime juice. Already said that. Salt and pepper to taste. And I like to stir in a spoon of sour cream. Good tablespoon of sour cream. To me, it just brings out a richness to the flavor. And I will usually just kind of let that be good to go. It's not overly assertive in its flavor, right? Then I'm going to do some pico de gallo. Essentially the same ingredients minus the avocado. I'm going to have tomatoes, I'm going to have peppers, I'm going to have onions, I'm going to have garlic, I'm going to have some lemon and lime juice, some cilantro. Usually a lot of cilantro in that, and salt and pepper to taste. And now let's start the assembly, or the assemblage, as we say in cooking. I don't like to put the chips on the bottom. That's up to you if you do. Oh, wait, before we get there, before we get to the assemblage, let's get to the queso, which is the key ingredient after all. Nacho cheese has to go on nachos. The stuff you get if you're served at the ballpark or if you buy it from a store is fake cheese. It's American processed cheese. It's essentially a cheese version of margarine. I don't like that. It's really easy to make a good queso sauce, a good cheese sauce. Just take equal parts flour and butter. Let's say a tablespoon of each. 2 tablespoons depending on how much you're making, right? Melt the butter in a pan, cook in the flour, cook until the flour's just lost its raw taste. You don't really want to, you're not making a gravy here. It doesn't have to be real brown or anything. Stir in some milk, get it loose and kind of make a gravy or a roux in the pan, and start adding in grated cheese. Whatever cheese you like. I normally do cheddar. I want that bright, yellow cheese sauce flavor, color, and actually flavor as well as nachos. And just grate it in like a pound. I mean, depending on what you're doing. Half pound, whatever you like. Keep stirring it in, melting, add some more milk if you need it. Get a good, creamy queso sauce. I will usually like to put in there some cayenne pepper to give it a little more of an orange color, a little more, with a little spice, obviously. And a little bit of garlic powder. I just think it really brings out the flavor. And it's usually salty enough, but you taste it, and if it needs a little extra salt, go for it. Actually, celery salt is going to bring out more of the cheese flavor, so that's just a little tip, All right, so let's start putting this together. Let's put down a layer of refried beans. I like a lot of refried beans, to your taste. I kind of arrange the chips around the side. That's the way I do it. On top of the refried beans, I'm going to put my ground beef. Then I'm going to cover all that with my cheese sauce. And I'm going to get it on the chips as well as the meat and beans. On top of that, I'm going with shredded lettuce or any salad green of your choice. It really doesn't matter. Put on top of that the guacamole. Usually a good serving of sour cream, at least a scoop or 2, because I like a lot of sour cream. And then tons of that pico de gallo. And on top of that, usually some chopped spring onion and some sliced black olives. I think the black olives really do add a nice just contrast to the flavor. It's like something just a little different every time you get a bite. Use your favorite. I like Kalamata olives. You could get just the regular old salad bar black olives. Any one of them is going to be better than none. And then what I like to do is some good hot sauce on top of that, whether it's a homemade fermented sauce, which I do a lot, or El Yucateca habanero sauce. That really is suited to my taste. Now, you may be a Tabasco person, it doesn't matter to me, but I like the heat and I like the fresh, not vinegary flavor of the El Yucateca. And so, I mean, I've got 5 pounds of nachos sitting here on this plate. And with that, I'm going to have at least 2 ice cold pints of lager beer with a slice of lime and just dig in and enjoy the game. And you can eat a lot of this, and yes, it's going to be a lot of calories, and no, I'm not encouraging gluttony, but you can be very pleased with this meal because everything in it is healthy. You've got real meat, real cheese, real vegetables, medicinal herbs, onions and garlic, hot peppers. It's actually a pretty good meal for you. And what's it going to cost you? $20-25 at the ballpark, and here you can have it at home. Maybe the whole meal for 4 people costs, I don't know, $5-6, and eat as much as you want and enjoy the game in your air-conditioned living room. So anyway, that's the way I like to enjoy baseball these days anyway. And remember, all these recipes are available in my book, The Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. So let's get to our herb of the week, which is skullcap. Skullcap's really one of my favorite herbs, not only because of its relaxing antispasmodic action, but it also has antiviral properties. Skullcap is the Scutellaria species. It's in the mint family. It is mostly an Asian and American herb. It doesn't have a lot of traditional use in Western Europe, although it was much known to the Russians. Yeah, the Russians probably found the skullcap from, the Chinese and the Mongols and all that, and Kazakhstan, that whole region. And so it does actually have use in Russian and to some extent Polish and Ukrainian herbal medicine, but you don't really find it among the Greeks and the Romans and those, more in the Mediterranean regions from which we really find our origins of herbal medicine. I would include in that the Middle Eastern and like the Egyptians and the Babylonians and all that. They would not have known skullcap. The earliest reference really I've found so far was Brother Aloysius in, European herbal medicine. Brother Aloysius was protege of Father Nape, and he was writing about German monastic medicine or folk medicine around 1900. So, I mean, you can see how new this herb was to the Germanic tradition, which really comes straight out of the Roman and Greek tradition. Skullcap probably did make its way into Germany from Russia. Going back to the Russian tradition, we can actually see that the Russians were using the Chinese skullcap, and it's Scutellaria bicalensis, something like that. He said the use of skullcap traces to the early inhabitants who lived in eastern Siberia, especially near the shores of Lake Baikal. I guess that's where it gets the name bicalensis. So Lake Baikal, Russia's deepest and most beautiful lake. It is believed that knowledge of this herb originally came from China, where herbalists called it Huantesin. No, I totally screwed that one up. But anyway, since skullcap grows in many parts of the world, there are 300 known varieties of this herb, and it has become a major part of most folk healing traditions. And it's true, there are many skullcaps. It is somewhat of a matter of controversy whether they can be used interchangeably. The Chinese, or apparently Russian skullcap, is known to be strongly antiviral, but that's the root. In the Western European and American traditions, we use the tops, we use the leaves and flowers, and even the tender parts of the stems. We don't really use the root. And Stephen Buhner suggested that it could be that all skullcaps have this antiviral property, but we just haven't learned how to use the root yet. I don't know. I don't know. many people will say that only the Chinese or Russian skullcap is antiviral. I think it needs more research. I don't know. But by 1931, Miss Grieve was well aware of this plant, and she said the skullcaps belonging to the genus Scutellaria are herbaceous, slender. Well, we don't need to get to that. And she said they grew in many parts of the world in temperate regions and tropical mountains, wet mountains like where I live, being especially abundant in America. And see, skullcap really does have a lot of association with American herbal medicine. She said there are about 90 known species belonging to the genus, only 2 members of which are natives of Great Britain. Scutellaria galliculata and Scutellaria minor. A little easier to say is the minor. Both are found on the banks of rivers and lakes and in watery places, generally. Of the Galliculata. There's how you pronounce it. She's called it the common or greater skullcap. It's fairly common in England, though rare in Scotland and only localized in Ireland. Scutellaria minor, the lesser skullcap, which grows chiefly in bogs, is not common except in western counties of Ireland. She then goes on to describe the ones that are native to America, especially the Scutellaria latiflora, which is what I'm actually growing right now, which is also known as Virginia skullcap. And like she said, the American species flowers in July, and actually mine flowered the last week of June, but then it has been particularly hot this year. And she said it has inconspicuous blue flowers. That's true. Ours has a much smaller flower than many varieties, and is one of the finest nervines ever discovered. Popularly, this plant is known in America as mad dog skullcap or madweed, having the reputation as being a certain cure for hydrophobia, that's rabies. Okay, it's not a cure for rabies. Now, it may have some antiviral properties if all the skullcaps share that quality, but it would be the root that would be strongest in it. Basically, rabies is accompanied by a lot of very strong cramps, muscular cramps. And being an antispasmodic, it was used to help ease the symptoms of rabies. Now, could the plant actually have some antiviral properties? Yes. Has that been proven? No. She says the English species Scutellaria galliculata and Scutellaria minor possess similar nervine properties to the American, and with Scutellaria integrifolia and other American species with flower in one-sided terminal racemes and are often used as substitutes. All she means is the British versions could be used, but they weren't quite as strong, essentially. Among the cultivated species are Scutellaria mycantha from Siberia, north of China, a handsome species with spiked racemes of blue flowers, and Scutellaria cucina from Mexico with scarlet flowers. That's actually a red-flowered skullcap. Skullcap is so named because the flower, it's in the mint family, and has a mint type of flower, and leaf actually, and a square stem just like a mint. But the flower looks like the hats that were worn in the Middle Ages. On our American version, the Mad Dog or Virginia skullcap, it's so small it's hard to see. It's a bigger flower on the one from Russia and China, and much bigger on the one from Mexico. She says the French name for this plant is toque. Medicinal uses and actions. Skullcap has a strong tonic, nervine, and antispasmodic action and is slightly astringent. In hysteria, convulsions, and hydrophobia, cite Vitus dansa. This is rabies. This is even epileptic seizures. Okay, and even in rickets, its action is invaluable. In nervous headaches, neuralgia, and in headaches arising from incessant coughing and pain. I've had those before. You ever get a bad cough and you cough until your head is just aching, and every time you cough it feels like your head's going to split open? Skullcap is really good for it. Also very good for spasmodic asthma. You can actually smoke skullcap for spasmodic asthma. It offers one of the most suitable and reliable remedies. The dried extract, given in doses from 1 to 3 grains as a pill, will relieve severe hiccup. Remember, hiccups is spasmodic of the diaphragm. She says that many cases of hydrophobia have been cured by this remedy alone. Now, I cannot responsibly, as a modern herbalist, say this, but if it is true that the skullcap, the American skullcap, is as strongly antiviral as the Chinese skullcap or the Russian, that could actually be the case. But all I can tell you is if you get bit by a rabid animal, go to the doctor. Legally, I can't say anything else. She says it's considered specific for the convulsive twitchings of St. Vitus dance. It's going to be epileptic seizures, soothing the nervous system, excitement, and including sleep when necessary without any unpleasant symptoms. And it does help with sleep. It's a nice sedative herb. It's very much like valerian in its effect. It may be prescribed in all disorders of the nervous system, and it has been suggested as a remedy for epilepsy. Writing on this point, British medical journalist in 1915, Dr. William Bramwell, says its efficacy appears to be partly due to the stimulating of the kidneys to increase activity. Overdoses of the tincture cause giddiness, stupor, confusion of the mind, twitching of the limbs, intermission of the pulse, and other symptoms indicative of epilepsy, for which in diluted strength and small doses it has been successfully given. In other words, if you overdosed on it, you could actually become dizzy, confused, and you may start to twitch and almost have almost something like seizure type symptoms. So, be careful. Don't take skullcap in too large a dose. I have never encountered any problem with skullcap, though. The European species Scutellaria galericulata was at one time given for the tertian ague, which was malarial fever, and was said to have been beneficial where the fits were more obstinate than violent. So, when you get a fever, you get the severe cramping muscles. Skullcap can help with that quite a bit, actually. Giving us insight into the traditional Native American use of this herb, William S. Banks, writing in Plants of the Cherokee in 1950, tells us the following information that he learned from the older Cherokee healers. He said the root is one of the ingredients in a kidney medicine, and you just heard how it seemed to stimulate kidney action. That was known in England by 1912. The decoction is taken for nerves. The root of the tea is a medicine for female monthly periods. It helps also with menstrual cramping, and was often used as a tea for young women. Resources of the Southern Field and Forest, which was published by the Confederacy during the Civil War, talk specifically of Scutellaria latiflora, or mad dog skullcap. First telling us where it was growing throughout the South at the time, and then giving a whole lot of footnotes and documents about botanical research. Said it is thought by some practitioners to have valuable therapeutic properties. Several doctors he mentioned speak of it in terms of its efficacy as a nervine. They have employed it in neuralgic and convulsive affections, cholera, delirium tremens, and nervous exhaustion from fatigue, or overexcitement, and have found it highly advantageous. Dr. Cleveland says he prefers it to all other nervines as an antispasmodic, except where an immediate effect is desirable. When you need something that works more quickly, in other words. And King's Medical Dispensary of 1898 had a very full entry on the use of skullcap in official medicine at the time. They give King's Medical Dispensatory was for pharmacists who at the time often had to gather the herb and make their own medicines from it. And so it tends to go into great detail about where to find the plant, when to harvest the plant, exactly what it looks like, how to process the plant, and it can be a little bit more than what we're looking for right now. But I highly recommend the book. You can find it online. Actions, medical uses, and dosages. Okay. Skullcap is a tonic, nervine, and antispasmodic. This is one of the most valuable agents which a certain class of physicians consider inert, yet it has proved especially useful in chorea, convulsions, tremors, intermittent fever, neuralgia, and many nervous affections. In delirium tremens, an infusion drank freely will soon produce a calm sleep. In intermittence, it may be beneficially combined with lycopus. So it's fevers again, and they're combining it with lycopus, often called bugleweed, but don't confuse it with ajuga reptans. Where teething has impaired the health of children, an infusion may be given with advantage. In all cases of nervous excitability, restlessness, or wakefulness, attending or following acute chronic disease, from physical or mental overwork, or from other causes, it may be drunk freely with every expectation of beneficial results. The warm infusion, that's a tea, has a tendency to keep the skin moist. The cold has a tonic influence, and either may be drunk freely. When its soothing effects have ceased, it does not leave an excitable, irritable condition of the system, as is the case with some other nervines. Skullcap has been extolled as a remedy for hydrophobia against rabies, but this is still a matter of uncertainty. That it influences the cerebrospinal centers controlling nervous irritation, there can be no doubt, and this fact is well illustrated by its control over the functional cardiac disorders due to purely nervous causes or without hysterical manifestations, and exhibiting intermittency of pulse. Specific scutellaria well represents the plant. Half an ounce of the recently dried leaves or herbs to 1/2 pint of boiled water will make a very strong infusion. Anyway, so it's saying it's good for nerve pain. It's good for any kind of cramping. It's good for any kind of irritability, agitation, hysteria, as they used to call it. Cardiac disorders due to purely nervous causes. That's going to be an elevated heart rate due to nervous excitability or stress. We could just call it stress, right? Influences cerebrospinal centers. They were saying it was good against tremors and seizures and all such things as that. And it's a very good sedative. They said specific indications of use: nervousness, attending or following acute or chronic disease from mental or physical exhaustion, teething in children, very good to know, nervousness manifesting itself in muscular action, tremors, hysteria, inability to control the voluntary muscles, functional cardiac disorders of purely nervous type, and intermittent pulse. And they give about 6 varieties of skullcap they knew at the time that could be used interchangeably. Going back to Stephen Herod Buhner, who really introduced skullcap in America as an antiviral. He was the nephew of the Surgeon General of the United States, and a great herbalist. Interesting character, a real character. Passed away not long ago, and wrote some fantastic books. In his book, Herbal Antiviral, he listed Chinese skullcap specifically, although he said probably most skullcaps could be used interchangeably, but the research just hadn't been done, as one of his 7 favorite antiviral herbs. Those would include Chinese skullcap, elder, ginger, Hotunia isatis, licorice, and limatium. Great book. Look for Stephen Herod Buhner's Antiviral Herbs. Herbalist Michael Moore listed skullcap as primarily used for pain as an antispasmodic. From one of his books, he said it was good for herpes, early nerve pain before eruptions, supportive to other measures, anxiety, syndromes, and chronic cardiopathies. That's basically what they just said about, increased heart rate due to nervous states. Functional neurocirculatory disorders, palpitations of the evening with emotional agitations, Sydenham's Chorea, Chorea, I probably mispronounced it a couple of times, but Chorea. Convulsions when other medications may not be necessary. Delirium tremens. Epilepsy when aura is present but condition is marginal for standard medication. Good for insomnia or from exhaustion following excitement, wakefulness and chronic disorders, multiple sclerosis, agitated and irritable from distress and fear, neuralgia, depression with physical agitation, oversensitivity to stimulus, hysteria with great oversensitivity to stimulus, pain, increased CNS sensitivity, and feelings of agitation and fear. Just, that like what we call now sort of panic attacks. Yeah. Plants for Future says lists 4 varieties of skullcap, but of the Baikal, that's the Chinese or Russian skullcap, the Baikal, I don't know, skullcap. They said it was one of 50 fundamental herbs in Chinese medicine and is used primarily in treating hot and damp conditions such as dysentery and diarrhea. It has been used medicinally for over 2,000 years, and recent research has found that the roots contain flavonoids that greatly enhance liver function and also have anti-inflammatory and anti-allergenic effects. The root is anodyne, antibacterial, anti-cholesteremic, antipyretic, antispasmodic, astringent, cholagogue, diuretic, expectorant, febrifuge, hemostatic, laxative, nervine, mildly sedative, stomachic, and tonic. It reputedly calms the fetus and pregnant women. The root is used internally in the treatment of enteritis, dysentery, diarrhea, jaundice, chronic hepatitis, urinary tract infections, hypertension, threatened miscarriage, nosebleed, and hemorrhage from the lungs or bowels. So, basically you can see why it's one of the 50 fundamental herbs in Chinese medicine. Specifically, the Chinese or Russian skullcap is almost a panacea as regarded in traditional Chinese medicine. The Virginia, we'll go with the common skullcap of England. The herb is anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, slightly astringent, febrifuge, nervine, and strongly tonic. In the home, an infusion is sometimes used in the treatment of throat infections. Skullcap was traditionally used in the treatment of a wide range of nervous conditions, including epilepsy, insomnia, anxiety, delirium tremens, withdrawal from barbiturates and tranquilizers, and neuralgia. An infusion of the plant has been used to promote suppressed menstruation. It should not be given to pregnant women since it can induce a miscarriage. This plant should be used with some caution because it can cause giddiness, stupor, convulsion, and twitching. So, in that case, whereas the Chinese skullcap was actually used for pregnant women, at least in traditional Chinese medicine, the English is being warned against, and that warning is back that overdoses could cause almost a seizure, essentially, and dizziness. Giddiness means dizziness, by the way. It doesn't mean laughing. I have to make that clear sometimes because people don't understand old-fashioned herbal lingo. Medicinal use of Virginia skullcap, which is what I'm growing. A commonly used herbal medicine, Virginia skullcap is a very effective nervine that has traditionally been used in the treatment of a wide range of nervous conditions. Its tonic and restorative properties help support and nourish the nervous system, calming and relieving stress and anxiety. Very little research has been carried out on this species despite its long use in American and British herbal medicine. Research is sorely needed and may reveal more uses for this valuable herb. The leaves are antispasmodic, slightly astringent, diuretic, nervine, sedative, and strongly tonic, and is used in the treatment of various problems of the nervous system, including epilepsy, insomnia, anxiety, delirium tremens, withdrawal from barbiturates and tranquilizers, and neuralgia. An infusion of the plant has been used to promote suppressed menstruation, relieve breast pain, and encourage expulsion of the placenta. It should not be given to pregnant women since it can induce a miscarriage. This plant is used with some caution because in excess it can cause giddiness, stupor, convulsions, and twitching. plant was once believed of use in the treatment of rabies, though there is no evidence to support this. So, what do we say about skullcap? Well, there are almost 100 varieties of skullcap, most of which have not been thoroughly explored and tested in laboratories to find out what their uses are. We have to go to folk use. While Stephen Herod Buhner and many others have said that the roots of all may be antiviral, we only know for sure that the Chinese or Russian one is. All of them, to some extent, are a very good sedative and antispasmodic. Whether they can really help with multiple sclerosis and epilepsy, I have no idea. I've never tried that. I don't know. There's no one in my circle that has that condition. If there is in yours, maybe carefully look into it. Do your own research. As far as the Chinese or Russian, that one has been used to help prevent miscarriage, whereas the American and English seems to cause miscarriage. I would say don't use this herb if you're pregnant. I always say don't use any herbs if you're pregnant unless you've got a really expert midwife that's telling you one is good to use. Because I always say, even raspberry leaf tea in excess can be quite dangerous. It's a really good herb. It's not hard to grow. I have found it to be a second-year plant. When I plant the seeds the first year, and they do need to be stratified, plant the seed this first year, it will come up kind of small and die back. It doesn't flower. Second year is abundant, and I can harvest all I like. And it comes back year after year. It's not difficult. And it's a really pleasant tea. Very good in tincture form. It helps with sleep. And I often add some to a pipe, to ease my lungs when my asthma's flaring up. It's very nice. And if you smoked a lot of it, it could probably be strongly sedative. I know a lot of people have said they use it for that purpose. But most of the skullcap you will buy commercially, cut and sifted skullcap, is going to be predominantly stems. So if you're using it for that purpose, for smoking, I would definitely say grow it yourself and dry it. But the stems are just fine to add to a tincture, so don't hesitate to buy some if you've got a good source and you're not growing it yourself. So anyway, y'all, that's it. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.